Hello. Sadly, no Richard. So Olga, you're saying the feral grandma. Don't forget to like on both channels. I don't know if Richard is streaming this or whether he will turn up later. I really don't know. So let's get cracking. I've got to put a password in for some reason. So don't know what that's about. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Here we are live on YouTube. Quite quiet. So that's not a problem because I'm just doing a little bit about this Keto CTA study, which was looking at ApoB. Well, it wasn't originally, and LDL, and some of the limitations really of that study. That's one of the things. And I was doing it live because if people had any questions, that would be fine too. So that was it. And here it is. So I just want to say hello to everybody. It's really good. I suppose we should set the tone really. And, you know, I'll nail my flag to the post. I'm a big fan of The Clot Thickens by Malcolm Kendrick, an excellent book. And also, I think when you look at the history of LDL cholesterol and the theory that it causes heart attack, you know, we started back in 1913 with a scientist feeding a rabbit cholesterol. Yeah, really dissolved in vegetable oil, and that rabbit did form a plaque, and that is how this all started. Doesn't that sound ridiculous before you even start? So if you're thinking about, well, it's all really good science, it isn't really good science. So it starts off like that and it gets worse. So there we are looking at a rabbit being fed cholesterol, which is not their natural diet, obviously. And then you had in the 50s and 60s, the Sugar Research Foundation with a lot of money, a lot of influence, talking to Harvard scientists, two Harvard scientists, and paying them in today's money $50,000 to say that sugar was not a problem, but fat was the problem. Of course, so we've got this rubbish experiment with a rabbit. Then we've got some fraud going on. And then in 1985, for instance, I'm going to avoid all the sort of scandals from the pharmaceutical companies. Don't really need to talk about that. I think most people know about those sort of things. I have got them in my book. But anyway, and then you had a thing called the National Cholesterol Education Program. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. And in 1987, strangely enough, when lovastatin was introduced, there was this National Cholesterol Education Program. And it was very interesting that came out in conjunction at the same time with statins. Purely coincidental, I'm really sure. But the idea was that it was supported in Congress for this thing, and basically that went from 0 people that could have a statin prescribed in the stroke of a pen to about 10 million, because the level for cholesterol was about 300 milligrams per deciliter, and everyone thought that was really fine. But all of a sudden, there was the big emphasis on cholesterol, and then the NCEP3, so that's the National Cholesterol Education Program. There was a second iteration, then a third. By 2001, the third one had managed to introduce another 42 million, say it again, potential new patients, because they started to emphasize a lot of LDL as the issue, not just total cholesterol. And also that was in the scope of what people wanted to do. They wanted to target LDL, of course. And then in 2004, the NCEP3 update came out, and that put 80 to 90% of men over 60 as potential candidates. Huge amounts of patients just because of the NCEP. You may not have heard of that before. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you a bit of context why I am like I am, because I find all these things very, very dubious. Now, the NCEP3 in 2004, the Journal of American Medical Association, or JAMA, they looked into the panel of the NCEP, and they found that out of the 9 members on the panel, 8 out of the 9 had a financial interest in in the pharmaceutical companies. I laugh because it's just so par for the course. So things like that don't really make me feel particularly wedded to the science, because there isn't any science. It's all pretty much epidemiological, which isn't very convincing. And then when you look at different studies, the Korean study, which followed people for 10 years, the lowest death rate in men was those that had cholesterol of 250 to 270. The Japanese study, those with a cholesterol of 220 to 260 lived longer than those with cholesterol under 200. So there was lots and lots of reasons to feel a little bit skeptical. Over 50% of people who have heart attacks have cholesterol less than 200. So loads of things to be concerned about. But anyway, I'm going to get to the study in question. I'm going to have a look at the study in question. I'll do a screen share, show you the title, and then we'll get to some graphs and just talk about it really. Now, there are some limitations, and there have been people not very happy with how the study has been presented to the public. I think they're missing, well, it's sort of a smoke and mirrors thing. I would agree that some of the stuff has opened them up to a lot of criticism, but that doesn't detract from what actually happened and the data. So let's just do a screen share and we'll go through what it was about. We haven't got any questions, so that's okay. I didn't think we would be, because, you know, this is very, very short notice. Now, I'm also not talking behind the author's back because I'm trying to get Dave Feldman in to do an interview, and I think I'll be able to do that. So let me just get rid of my stupid face there that's covering it. Let's get rid of that. Right, here we go. So this is the study in question that and I'm going to get rid of that banner because that's annoying as well. Right, okay. So this is the study in question, and it came out a couple of weeks ago. Nick Norwitz, fantastic guy, Dave Feldman, and you know, other authors on there. There's quite a few there. Right. Anyway, right. So the idea was that they would look at something and give you some results. Now, this is the first problem, you see, because when you do a study, and it's good that science has done this, because the idea is to make it a level playing field and everyone being all above board. And this is where I think they've shot themselves in the foot a little bit. You do this pre-registered primary outcome, which is covered in the study. But the thing is, the way I think the data came out, it wasn't the focus. Now, I'm also a scientist and very curious. I've got an honours degree in physiology and health sciences. And I think if I was doing a study and some other thing developed that was pretty exciting, I think I'd want to talk about that more than maybe the primary outcome. I don't think it's a smoke and mirrors thing. I don't think it's a deflection because they didn't get the answer they wanted, which, again, I will cover. This is not going to be just, you know, a love fest about this. But that's basically what they did. So when they originally submitted it, they were going to look at, well, I'll read it. Study protocol paper 2024, PMID 388611193. The purpose of the study was to assess coronary plaque burden in lean mass hyperresponders and near lean mass hyperrespondent individuals with LDL-C above 190 milligrams and blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. Right. So, and that is in the graphs, that is covered. But I think the footage is, and all the social media commentary has been about other things rather than that particular outcome. And I think that's what's irked a few people. So what are the problems? So let's actually go through this. So a lean mass hyperresponder, for those that don't know, they fit a triad of high LDL. I'm not going to call it cholesterol because it isn't cholesterol really. It's a low density lipoprotein that contains cholesterol and other things. But anyway, for the sake of this, I will say LDL cholesterol. So for the study, it's high LDL, and that's matched with also high HDL and low triglycerides. So that's the triad that people like Dave Feldman and Nick talk about. And that's sort of, you have to be lean, obviously. And what happens is you seem to have higher LDL while you're metabolically healthy. Now, I know they had 100 people in this study, but one of the things I think is a little bit of a problem is this delimited group. And I know that's what they're trying to study, but if you had a control group, a few of the things that they've been accused of being problematic, I think would have actually been dissipated by having a control group. So just to give you an analogy, if you've got an apple tree and it's a really big, tall tree, very broad, very wide, and it's got apples all over it, and you wanted to know what's the state of the apples I'm growing. If you just picked 5 or 6 from the top, it wouldn't give you a really good idea about that apple tree. What about the ones at the bottom, that are in the shade? What about the ones that are in the middle of the tree? So a lean mass hyperresponder would be the top of the tree, you see, and you would get a slightly distorted view of the apples. And if something happened to the apples at the top, you couldn't extrapolate that to the apples at the bottom. So, for instance, if they were too sweet for people, you wouldn't be able to say, well, that's just because it's at the top. You'd be guessing. You would be guessing. And that's one of the problems, not having control or not having randomization. Okay, but I'm sure it's down to funding. It's expensive to do these sort of studies. But anyway, so with that being said, they came to some conclusions. So I'm just going to stop the screen share for a second, and then we'll get to the graphs, because it's going to be a bit seasick inducing if you just see me scrolling. And we'll get to the graphs, and we'll just talk about the findings. I think actually we'll show you that, and this is where possibly you've got some problems, because this is the central illustration. So it's explaining that you have 100 people who are keto, following a ketogenic diet. Of course, another thing is it is self-reported. Now, the big thing I would say from my phlebotomist side of things is, if someone is doing this way of eating from their bloods. So I'd have to say the adherence to the diet is a giveaway from the blood. So I don't think that's a big problem, actually. And they did go back and do other tests between the baseline and the end of the year. But what they're pushing forward, you see, is the change in total plaque score and the change in non-calcified plaque volume, which isn't really what the primary outcome was about. So what we do is we would say that possibly that shot themselves in the foot a little bit, but I would go to the next graph anyway, and we'll just describe what happened. And where we're having some problems. Okay, so let's have a look. So non-calcified plaque volume, non-calcified plaque. So you have calcified plaque and non-calcified, and obviously the volume is looking at it through a CTA, or you're looking at calcified plaque with a CAC. So they've done two different ways of measuring. So you've got the soft plaque and you've got the calcified plaque. And the volume obviously is exactly what it says. So as a percentage of your heart, so let's get one of the other graphs up. Let's put that on. Now, one of the big problems with this is it's not particularly clear. Let's just zoom in a little bit and get a bit more of a look at the screen. Now, so what you've got is baseline. So these are the measurements of this particular thing here. So we're looking at change. Let me get that so I'll make that a little bit clearer. Right. And it's always measured in cubic millimeters. Non-calcified plaque volume here, baseline, and then a year later, is there a change? Now, if you look at the top, this particular individual has seen a huge change, but I think you'd agree that this is 100 people in these dots, that most of it is concentrated down here, where they've sort of shaded it in red, just to make it easier, and then they put a line in there to show that there is progression. And this is also one of the things that's come across as a problem, because they're saying that there's a lot of progression even with everyone, although that isn't actually true. That is a bad criticism, because I think the 6 participants actually saw regression. But we'll get into the nuance in a minute. So let's just get rid of that. I don't want to scroll too much. And we'll go to the next set of graphs and talk about what the findings were, if that's okay with everybody. I hope that is okay. Yes. And the coronary artery calcium scan is something I had before I was carnivore, low carb or keto. I was one of those poster boys for the food guidelines. I ate a lot of bread and pasta. I had granary bread, whole grain bread. I had porridge oats, I had skim milk, freshly squeezed orange juice, lots of fruit, lots of veg, didn't smoke, didn't drink, and I was very active. Those medals are for running. I was doing 10 miles 3 times a week at a really good pace. I was always fit, even in my 20s. I was very fit, and my coronary artery calcium scan was 639. That's one of the worst scores that I know in this space. Some people have like 700s, but anyway. So this is close to my heart. There you go. You get a joke, even on a live. Right. Yes, and crafted performance, they were saying the supplementary data shows daily keto measurement was taken. So I would say they did the keto of sorts. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's have a look at some of the graphs, and we just go through them, and let's be very rudimentary about it before we get too nuanced. Okay, so here we are, figure 2, changes in non-calcified plaque volume and total plaque score versus apolipoprotein B and coronary artery calcium. So the first one here, and what they're looking for here, is every single data point is a person. So there's 100 dots on there. I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. Should we zoom in a little bit more? Shall we? So I'd like to zoom in on that. So we just make that a bit clearer. And so what we've got here is changes in ApoB. Now, we are told that ApoB, high levels are dangerous, but they can cause plaque progression. And I think these findings are the reason why people are unhappy, because it doesn't fit the narrative. I'm not saying it's the greatest study in the world. I do think there's loads of limitations, and I will come onto that. But I do also like the data. And the limitations I actually want to do with Dave Feldman. But anyway, should be seeing him next week, hopefully. Right. So if we look at this, what we've got in the middle there is a 0. And then we've got the reduction, the delta ApoB there, and it's going down by 50, going up 100. And it's going up 50 and going up 100. And then you've got this baseline of 0. And then this is the non-calcified plaque volume. So this person here has regressed over a year. They haven't seen anything go up. So then we've got some people on the 0 line here. But the point is of this graph, if you just take a broad step back, is there's no trend that shows as your ApoB goes down, these data points are up here. Really, what you should see, let's be honest, let's be very frank, is if the ApoB theory of plaque progression was true, you would see lots and lots of dots down here with hardly any progression, or even some sort of at the 0 line. And when it goes up, you would see them up here, and you would see a line that goes across a diagonal like that. But you're not seeing that, so that there's no real correlation there, which you can do by eye. I know you can use other ways, but you can see that there's no correlation. So then if we go to just the raw value of ApoB, so this is, again, the 0. Here's the plaque volume. And what you can see is as it goes up, there is a small amount of correlation between it going up and the plaque, non-calcified plaque volume going up. So we could say that shows something, but it's not very meaningful, is it? It's really not. And you do get these outliers, because you've got somebody here, and this is where the individuality of everybody and all other risk factors come into it, which we don't know about. This person is really quite bad, but so is this person. And their ApoB is half of this person over here. So I would have to say that it's not very convincing. And this is where statistical power comes in. We've only got 100 people. If we had 100,000 people, it would be more telling, much more telling. And then when we get to coronary artery calcium, so that's the arteries that have been calcified. So they are allegedly more stable. I always think of calcified arteries as nature's stent. This is what we've got. So we've got this data point up here, and we've also got a much more pronounced line. So the first thing is, if you've got a 0 score or a very small score, I think you can still see the big cluster of people more, remember, it's supposed to be 100 dots. We can see that a lot, are at 0 and not much has happened. But if you do have some calcium, and again, we've got regression here. I meant to mention that actually, that, ApoB going up, you shouldn't get any regression if the theory is true, but you do get regressions and you also get stability. So going back to coronary artery calcium scan, the other two were done by CTA, CTA, which is an angiogram, which can look at both calcified and non-calcified. But this is calcified. And you can see that as your baseline score goes up, and don't forget, I told you I was 639. My plaque volume probably may increase. I haven't had a second test yet. So again, that's the other thing. This is only 2 tests. I always recommend that you should have 3 tests at least, because then you can start to see a trend. The other problem is going back to a control group. There's no control group. So all we can really take from this, and it is a good thing to take from it, there is good data here, is this is what applies to a lean mass hyperresponder. That's it. Because we can't extrapolate it out. And it's only 1 year. So the tenure of this test is only 1 year. So it'd be nice to have a follow-up, which I'm sure the guys are going to do, because they really are curious about this. What annoys me is this should be making people that do believe in the LDL theory of diet, the diet heart hypotheses. Those people that believe in high LDL should be looking at this and thinking, well, hang on a minute, this is not really in tune with what I'm thinking. Why is that? And they're not. They're using some other things, like I say, the primary outcome being registered differently, which I agree with, because science should be done. It's a discipline, so you should be doing that. And also, I don't think these graphs are great, and I don't think having no control group, no randomization, all of those things. And then we're going to come to another problem now, which is done. So this was all AI assisted, by the way, which doesn't mean it's bad, but I'm just saying it is what they did. And then they got some humans to do this, which is the total plaque score. And they just basically eyeballed it and gave it a score of -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is why you get these strange data points in a long line. But it's still usable data, because what it's showing is with ApoB, again, reducing or going up, there's no real discernible pattern there. So the total plaque score, that's quite telling. I would like a continuous variable, which gives you wiggly lines, for want of a better word, because there's not much nuance here really. But it's a good score. It's still a good score. It's still indicative of what's going on, so we'll accept it. And again, when we go to raw data, the level of ApoB, as it goes up, again, it's just messy, really. It's just a messy sort of plot, maybe a slight incline in that red line, but I don't think it's compelling. I don't think it's particularly good for those that believe that ApoB is dangerous. And I think you get slightly more of a feel for this from the coronary artery calcium scans, where you see slightly more. But again, if you look at the clumping here of the dots to the left-hand corner, well, it's pretty telling. So, right, let's go down. There was one other thing I wanted to show you. I'm quite happy to scroll just a little bit. The other thing, and I thought it was really nice that they included it, was saturated fat intake, because apparently saturated fat intake is going to be correlated with all sorts of problems, and that just is not borne out in the data at all. Again, you've got this myriad of just dots everywhere. So remember, that's 100 real people that really are doing this and being tested. And they're going on that CAC machine and CTA, having really good a good look at their arteries and the calcification, total plaque volume, all those sort of things are being measured, and it doesn't show you anything. So the saturated fat intake, as it goes up, there's no discernible pattern there whatsoever. So I think at a very rudimentary level, it does sort of say that those that are believing high LDL or high ApoB is problematic, they need to have a little look at it. I definitely do, because that's pretty compelling data. I do agree with all the other things that people are upset about. I definitely think that the original pre-registered primary outcome wasn't handled as well as it could be. Let's put it that way. And then we're also looking at the fact that whatever you want to do, there is progression for a lot of people. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed. And again, would be if we had a control group, that would be much better, because I do believe, although a lot of people are comparing it to other studies, I think if we had a control group with under the same circumstances, using the same lab, same machine, those sort of things, with this amount of accuracy, I think that would be, much more telling, just much more telling, and we'd be able to hang our hat on some things. So I think that was a little bit of a problem, really. So that was it, really. That was what I wanted to talk about, that study. And like I say, hopefully I'm going to get Dave Feldman on to have a chat about it. These single arm observational studies are good. I mean, I'm a big fan of the fact it's real people, but we've got no average progression percentage reported, which is a big thing. And I think one of the authors did something on Twitter and said the volume was something like 18.3 cubic millimeters. And I think that is, higher than people were expecting. But that's not in the paper. That was on a tweet. So again, that's another thing that I think needs to be looked at. But where they say plaque begets plaque, that's still not telling you the cause, is it? It's just saying it's a predictor. And that is something that they were looking for. What is the things we can use to predict that there's going to be a problem? And it does that. It shows you that ApoB and LDL is not a good predictor. And eating saturated fat is not a good predictor. That's what it's showing. Yes, it needs a bigger sample size. Yes, it needs not a delimited group. It needs randomization. It needs a bit more power to say stuff. But it's a good start. I just think slightly handled badly, personally. But that's it. I mean, it's the first paper that group of authors has put out, and certainly there's a lot of nuance that I haven't covered. That's why I wanted Mr. Feldman on, and he's agreed to come on, so that'd be great. Don't know if that'll be next week or the week after. He might watch this and think, oh, well, that's rubbish how he's covered that. I don't want to go on there, but hopefully he won't say that. So anyway, that was that. I was hoping that Richard would pop in, but obviously he can't do that. I would say that, we do have to look at other bits, the supplementary tables and things like that. So, this isn't proof that keto causes heart disease, and it's not a proof that it doesn't. It's a beginning, isn't it? That's the thing. And hopefully that's been helpful to those people that have been watching it. There are other things that we could talk about, the fact that none of them are on statins and all those sort of things. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was this alleged problem on carnivore, just going off the Keto CTA study and just getting into high HbA1c. And it's one of those things, it's a bit of a bugbear. And again, I've done a Substack about this because it's a misnomer. And what came to mind was to talk about this tonight is because you had yet another client worried about it. But their daily blood glucose, which they were measuring both with a finger prick, so a capillary test, and also with a continual glucose monitor, they knew that their average blood glucose was really good. So it was 80 milligrams per deciliter on a daily basis, and yet their HbA1c had gone up after, I think, a year and a half of this way of eating. They'd reversed their type 2 diabetes. They'd lost a load of weight. They were looking much healthier, but they were still worried about the HbA1c going up. So why does the HbA1c go up? And that's an easy one to talk about, because when you eat this way, the HbA1c is not a direct measurement. It's a calculation. It's an assumption. So when I started in phlebotomy, which is many, many, many years ago, I was told to watch out for low HbA1c and to test for hemolytic anemia for anyone that had a low HbA1c. And that was because their red blood cells didn't last as long as they should, which should give you a little clue as to why I am saying that the HbA1c isn't a direct measurement of glycation. It is a calculation because there is an assumption of red blood cell life in there. So it's not a huge leap to think that if you have an artificially low HbA1c because your red blood cells die too soon, then you will get an artificially high HbA1c if your red blood cells die later. And that can be proven with things like the reticulocyte count, which is looking at how your bone marrow is producing red blood cells. And that is what I see time and time again, that the red blood cell production has actually decreased. So they are living longer because all the other measurements in the CBC are great. And you get this artificial high, alleged high HbA1c. The glycation of the hemoglobin. It's not looking at the hemoglobin and saying, wow, it's XYZ. It's saying, it's XYZ, but we've got to factor in 120 days of life. And they don't live 120 days, they maybe live 150. So it has a huge impact on that. Also, when you've got some other bloods, such as your daily blood glucose readings, and then occasionally you go into the lab and you have fasting insulin C-peptide, maybe every 6 months, and you see that your glucose control is fantastic and your insulin is pretty sensitive and low, then the HbA1c is again an outlier. Now, why am I adding this to what we just said? And that it's because I see all these metrics improve, but one of the things that goes up when your blood pressure goes down and you get off your diabetic medications, you get off your blood pressure medications, you sleep better, you have more energy, your skin gets better, your anxiety goes down. I see LDL going up. So why would all those things be better and not be reflected in the LDL going up? Because I do believe in the lipid energy model. I do think that the more we are eating this way, the more fat will circulate in the blood. And I think that's pretty obvious, actually. So that's my little bit about the HbA1c. If you don't know about my school community, now, this is one of the things. I like people to be able to find things out and ask questions. And sometimes we can't have enough time on YouTube to do that. So if you wanted to join my school community, you could. Let me just show you. If you've never seen what the school community looks like, just a very quick thing. So, over there, I know there's a few members online now because I can see them. This is what the school community looks like. If you want to join it, I'll put a link in the chat and also in the description. And this is where we've got lots of like-minded people asking loads of questions, and they're asking questions that maybe, we don't kick people out for not having the same opinion as us. It's not an echo chamber. There is a school room as well. So the more you're in the classroom and the more you're interacting, the more courses open up to you. And there's 9 courses you can do. All of them come with ebooks and videos. You can download all the details. We've got a free keto course, and then we've got 19 tips to going carnivore. So we cover all those bases. Great book about thyroid. There's a couple of ebooks in there which are worth the admission fee alone. Talk about dairy, the pros and cons, fruit and veg, all the details coming from the growers themselves, which is interesting. All the PDFs from the growers of apples and pears and all the different veg. It's quite a mind-blowing video in there that will surprise you. For instance, did you know that many apples in the supermarket are over a year old because they're in a controlled environment? But we've got all the details, all the documents, which are public domain. So, that's true. Pears, at least 8 months in an controlled environment before they're on the shelves at the supermarket. Great stuff about protein, problem solving. When you get to level 8, you get a free book. I've written How to Be a Carnivore. If you can't wait, you can buy that from Amazon and from my store if you want. And then there's this is a premium thing, Fat Club, where you pay and we give you guidance for 60 days. Every single day there is a video for you to follow. And this is the calendar. So we always have like a live on a Monday for an hour. Here's the live today. And then on Sunday, we've got another hour on YouTube and then another members only on Sunday. So let's get rid of that. So you can join the school community if you want to. And I will put a link in the chat now for that. Let's just do that, and I'll have a look at the questions. Talk amongst yourselves. That is crazy about the fruit age. Yes, I mean, that's one of the things that does frustrate me. And also, it is amazing, actually. Let's have a look. Stephen, can we buy your blood test book from your web store? Yeah, absolutely. Apologies, I haven't looked there. Yep, and you can also get it from my website. The description to this video should have all the links as well. I'm just going to get the link for Skool for people that are looking now and may be interested. And what we do in Skool is we talk about all the studies and we go about our business in a nice, polite way. There's no stress. We just get on. And I think there's some members here. So if any members want to chime in, whether it's good or bad or whatever. And I'm now going to go to some questions. So let's have a little look at the questions. So that's don't forget to like on both channels. Yes, please like and share and subscribe. All that stuff is very handy. As part one, yes, crafted performance. The paper should have been split as part one of X to address the primary outcome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of hindsight where it could have been better. Fantastic guy. Who cares? Judge the paper, not the personality. Yeah, absolutely. Judge the paper, not the personality. So that's what I was trying to do. There was some great data there, so we did it. But academia is very annoying, actually. When I did my honours degree, I didn't want to go to masters because I found it really frustrating because I was pointing out that the studies, the conclusions, the abstract, and the data didn't match up, and my tutors didn't really get it. And the problem is, and I now realise that we see this with some of the influencers out there who just don't care about clinical presentation or reality or observing or thinking. They don't know any of that. They've got to have a study. A study trumps everything else. It trumps people getting better. You know, I've actually said to some of the influencers, you know, on their websites when they've commented, but eating meat has reversed this person's type 2 diabetes. So how can it cause it? And it isn't just one person. It's like maybe 250. That's just, well, have you got a study for that? Yeah, I've got 250 people that have just come off. But anyway, let's have a look. An area that is a little confusion is a CAC, but measuring non-calcified plaque. CAC typically measures calcified plaque. Yeah, that's why they've done both. So it's non-calcified plaque and a CAC score, so they can tell you about soft plaque and calcified plaque. So the CAC score was done, and also a CTA, which looks at the non-calcified. So that's good. Let's have a look at this. It reinforces that there are other root causes in my interpretation. Absolutely. That's my point. It does mean we need to look away from LDL and ApoB. They're not causes. I mean, we could get into the vasoviscorum, and we could get into Vladimir Subutin's work, where we look at different mechanisms. We could look at the thrombotic theory, which is, you know, Malcolm Kendrick's thing. All more compelling, and that they stack up more. Certainly, when you actually look at the mechanisms, because cholesterol isn't bad. Cholesterol goes through your veins and it goes through your arteries. It's contained in a low-density lipoprotein or a high-density lipoprotein or any intermediaries in between, and it only causes problems in the arteries. But not only does it not only cause, it's only in the arteries, it's only in certain places of the arteries, and it's only in predictable places in the arteries, where there's high blood pressure, where there isn't laminar flow of the blood, where it's turbulent flow. We know where the plaque is going to progress. So we know it's arteries, we know it's high pressure, we know that it's turbulent flow, and we know that there's got to be some sort of injury, because whenever they study LDL in a coronary artery, they have to damage it, they have to damage the endothelium to actually make a plaque progress. So that's, yeah, anyway, don't get all ranty. Crafted performance, as you have said, read the sample group. There's no reference to a non-LDL result, so it's difficult to cross-reference whether this group is higher than a non-high. Yep, absolutely. That is, I think, one of the biggest things. So, but it is, yeah, a big credit to the crowdfunding and non-pharma, which is why you probably got the result you got, because you haven't got conflicts of interest. As I say, I mean, the National Cholesterol Education Programme, you know, the panel is 9 people, of which 8 work for the pharmaceutical companies, and they keep lowering the threshold to be able to prescribe a statin. And wow, yeah. So yeah, there you go. And that was in the Journal of American Medical Association. So there you go. Right. Hugo says, Bart K considers it garbage. I've yet to read it myself, but that's a warning sign for me. Absolutely. Yes, I understand that. there are limitations with it, definitely. But I was trying to go through what we could glean from it, but I don't think it's, I agree with Bart, actually. I don't think it has come out very well. I don't think it's helped the cause, if you want to say it is the cause. So like, yeah, it could be handled better. That's what I would say. And just got my blood test results, as it happens. After a 42-hour fast and strict carnivore, my HbA1c was 35. That is the UK minimals. Yep. So yes, there's people toing and froing in the chat. Right, let's have a look. So let's have a look. Even my vitamin D is good considering reading. So yeah, that's good. So I think that's good. Excellent discourse, super supportive group. Everyone is very curious. Love the live Q&As with Stephen and Richard. Arguing LDL is bad is like arguing that the body is trying to kill itself. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, 70 to 80% of your cholesterol is made by your liver. Liver's not stupid. Why is it doing that? Well, because we need it. And if you reduce your dietary intake of cholesterol, the liver ramps up production of cholesterol. Another great thing is the brain. I mean, the brain produces its own cholesterol because cholesterol can't cross the blood-brain barrier. The brain makes its own cholesterol. So why would the body do that if it was a poison? I mean, saying cholesterol is a poison or is bad for you is possibly one of the dumbest things in the world, to be honest. So the liver's making it, the brain is making it. Yeah. So I do think it's rather strange, actually. And it is very frustrating. It is absolutely frustrating that people can't be a bit more open and look at what's in front of them. Let's get rid of that for a second. Thank you for that question. Let me see if I can get one other bit up for you. Let's have a. Can't find my document now. I was going to get a document about the national education, the National Cholesterol Education Program, but I can't. And maybe let me try and get that JAMA article up about the conflicts of interest. Bear with me 1 second. My computer's playing up. Computer says no. I think that's a catchphrase in the UK for old people like me in my 60s. So I don't know if we've got any other questions. Let's have a look. Let me have a look, because this was just impromptu, so I shouldn't really be doing this. Like I say, I'll put lots of links in my description to help you. Oh yes, how do we? Oh, here we go. There's one. Hugo, Stephen, how do you read a reticulocyte panel? Can you give us a very short rundown? Yes. A high reticulocyte a higher reticulocyte count means you're making lots of red blood cells, and if it's low, you're making fewer. It's really that simple. It measures the percentage of reticulocytes, the immature red blood cells in the blood, which are coming directly from the bone marrow. Okay, so that's what we know. So if I get a blood panel and people have exactly what I just said, they have very low blood glucose, they have very low fasted insulin, their C-peptide is fantastic, and they say they've been measuring their blood over the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days with their continual glucose monitor. They've been finger pricking, and their HbA1c has gone up. Bet your bottom dollar it's down to the fact that the reticulocyte count is low because your red blood cells are living longer, and therefore the calculation for the HbA1c is skewed because it's assuming the life of the red blood cells is 120 days. It really is that simple, and it's provable. So there's other things, and what happens is you have this knock-on effect when the red blood cells are not being turned over as often because they're living longer. 90% of the iron in your blood or in your body is not from food. 90% is coming from the breakdown of hemoglobin. So the heme's coming from the hemoglobin, it's going back into the system. It's 90% of the iron that your body needs. So if you're making between, let's say, 180 million red blood cells a minute, and it does make a lot of red blood cells, and it suddenly drops to 120 new red blood cells every minute, that's a huge amount of heme iron that's not coming back from the hemoglobin. So that's one of the things that pushes your ferritin up, because you're not getting the heme recycling. Your body's really smart, so it stores away a little bit more blood. A little bit more iron in ferritin. Because then when you look at the iron panel and you look at the serum iron, this really only applies to sort of keto and carnivore, or anywhere where your red blood cells are living longer. When you look at that, the ferritin is a smart reaction, a physiological reaction to the fact that your red blood cells are not breaking down and recycling. And it all joins up. All of this all joins up. So yeah, it's a really interesting subject. So when you get into, blood is just amazing. And when you look at the variation, how there's no nuance in mainstream medicine, it's just crazy, absolutely crazy. Right. I hope everyone's enjoyed that. Craft would love to see some demonstrated tests on this, Stephen. Lower reticulocyte count incarnate. Yeah, I think my book, The Guide to Blood Tests, I do put a lot of people's bloods examples in the book. So I can't remember off the top of my head if a reticulocyte count is in there, but when I revise it, it definitely will be, but I think it might be. But you'll be surprised. There's so many different things that you can look at when you've got a little bit of knowledge, and you'll see it completely different. You'll see it all completely different. Right. An awesome point for carnivore is that it controls parasites. If no carbs are eaten, still need a yearly or twice yearly treatment, though. That's from Tall Cedars. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Shame we didn't see Richard. I think that would be great. And I will do the reticulocyte count. I might actually do it in one of our lives, or maybe in a school meeting with our lovely members. I'll get some of the bloods out where people have done that and actually show you one. I don't know if I've got one off the top of my head. Because, well, I don't know. Let's have a look. I'd have to just have a look. Doing a search. My computer is supposed to be. I've got thousands, so I wouldn't be able to pinpoint the one straight away. But I will do that. I think that's a great idea. I'm definitely going to do that. I'll get some of the panels out. I'll track down some reticulocyte counts, and we will do that. We will definitely do that. We'll do that in a school. So yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good evening. Hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll see you on Sunday for the live stream on YouTube at 7 p.m. in the UK with myself and Richard. We've got the guest Carnivore Muscle coming in. So if you want to know a bit about bodybuilding, or you want to argue with Jonathan, you can. Andy just said we don't do arguments, we are calm. That's absolutely true. We want a nice discussion with Jonathan, you can. And then, of course, on Sunday at 8 p.m, the members only meeting is in our school group. Hopefully you can join us there as well. So yeah, thanks for your attention, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye. I'm leaving the studio.